Welcome to Cancer and Peace Moments. This is Peter. These moments are 15-minute clips of the larger episodes. Blessings. But we want to talk about this topic of endurance, and it's something that I have recently spent time with and poured myself into as I've been asked by the church that I attend to actually share about this and share how it relates to my cancer journey. Because for me, I am entering my 18th year of this cancer journey, which began in 2005. And so many of you know from my resume the reason why endurance is applicable to this journey, and it's has over the 18 years. My resume includes 15 surgeries, mostly major, and one described as the most extensive done in urology, but it's involved like 6 recurrences and 7 years of immunotherapy treatments. It became metastatic in 2015, and countless procedures, tests, scans, and twice being told to go home and call hospice care. But I think one of the features of my journey with cancer has been that there hasn't been a let up, that it's been a constant spiral, actually, just a constant journey, a constant path of not being able to step outside of the cancer space. And that's unusual from my own experience with interacting with cancer patients. Usually they receive surgery, they get treatment, and they might have a recurrence later, but they're pretty much done with the cancer treatment and the cancer journey if they're a cancer survivor, of course, but if they don't get a recurrence, or someone who gets diagnosed and it's a terminal diagnosis right away, and that person lasts so long and then passes on. So to sort of have somebody who's just dwelling in a metastatic cancer space, and I've asked my oncologist, when can I stop the immunotherapy treatment, the systemic treatment that goes throughout my body, and she just said, you're in uncharted territory, you're an anomaly. We're not used to people with your cancer cell living, but our data shows that if you stop the treatment, the cancer comes back. So I'm in this like catch-22 where I have to continue my treatment, and the future is unknown. It's uncertain. I have no idea if I can ever stop the treatment. If I do, is this, will the cancer come back right away? Is it terminal? I just don't know the answer to those questions. But I think what it's meant for me is, how do I do life in a metastatic cancer space every day, day after day, month after month, year after year? I think that's been the issue of endurance. How do you do that? And so currently the church that I'm attending is going through the Hall of Faith chapter. It's from Hebrews 11th chapter. It starts out by defining what faith is. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And then it goes through all these champions of faith, all the greats from these scriptures. And there's one portion in the chapter where it talks about when things don't go so well, where people are martyred for their faith, and they're living in caves, that kind of, it's just a one of those situations that one has to endure. And I don't know. And so the definition of endurance, it's actually defined pretty much in scripture, but it says that endurance means patience under suffering. So that's the definition for endurance. Persistence is a sister word, which means to basically exist in the face of difficulty, but not to give up, sort of thing. And so I think the issue for me is, in this cancer space, is how do I have patience while I'm suffering? and going through in the middle of an 18-year cancer journey.
That's a great definition, patience under suffering. And so endurance seems like one of the most important things that we're going to need to do. And I'm actually curious because we're I feel like in a cultural moment where endurance is being downplayed, not emphasized, because there's this idea of avoiding suffering.
I picked out two main features of endurance, which I think links up with what you're saying. And to me, the two main features of endurance are acceptance and purpose.
Yeah.
But folded within acceptance for me has been dealing with tough emotions. And I did want to give up. I did give up. I did. And it was after that November 2nd, 2015 surgery where everything was dark as dark can be. I wasn't supposed to live, 5% chance. I couldn't do recovery. I was just depressed and devastated and traveling in disillusionment with my faith even. It's like, where is God? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm stopping. And so I wasn't at a place of acceptance. I was dealing with trauma, and I was frozen. I was in a freeze state with trauma. And it was waking up to the reality of my own emotions. In other words, giving myself permission to express those really tough emotions that started my enduring process. Endurance was birthed in those tough emotions, being able to express them. If I had to try to white knuckle that part of the journey, I would not have made it. I had to let go, recognize my powerlessness, and start expressing those tough emotions.
Yeah, I want to define that just a touch. I think that's what you described is super important and really and beautiful too at the same time. And prior to that letting go, you had to make a decision. Well, let me say it this way. I don't think people endure usually by themselves, that they have to have support in some manner. You asked the question, or your doctor asked the question, hey, do you want to do the PET scan before or after vacation?
Yeah.
And what was your response?
It is what it is. Let's just do it before. It doesn't matter.
And I redefined that of you're saying, hey, I want to live in reality.
Right.
And it's okay to live in reality because you can trust God. And when you can trust God, you have real peace. And that's what we're talking about. Endurance moves you towards peace because there's kind of like a chain reaction that happens here.
And I think back to James, because it's interesting, and I'd love to get your thoughts sometime on this, maybe not now, but where James says, and you will be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. When endurance has its fullness in you, or at least as full as it can be. And we're not talking about sinless perfection here, because Paul, even in the later years of his life, said, Jesus Christ came to sinners, of which I am the chief sinner. So we know it doesn't mean sinless perfection. So there's something that happens for us that God does in us to complete us, mature us through endurance. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that sometime.
Yeah, that's going to be a longer conversation.
Yeah.
I have lots of thoughts on that, but I think that is a longer conversation.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth us, doing an episode on just that. The journey to perfection, so to speak, is a.
And I think it ties in with, you always talk about a non-anxious presence. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Blessings.